Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos here with Method, and in this video I'll be ranking all 6 tank classes in Mythic Plus here in patch 8.3. Check out the other videos in this series on this channel to hear about the DPS and the healers. I'm going to rank each tank by scoring them on 4 categories. These scores are based on high-level keys on the live servers, but I will mention where to expect things to be different in an MDI setting, as slightly different effects are valuable in that context. Damage, for instance, tends to be even more important, and the incoming damage profile is a little different too. The most important thing that tanks need to be able to do is survive incoming damage. In Mythic Plus, this is overwhelmingly physical damage, though there are a few enemies like Shadow of Zul, and a few affixes like Bursting, that will test the tank's ability to withstand magic damage. Out of the 10 points for tankiness, 8 will be awarded based on the tank's physical mitigation, and 2 will instead look at their anti-magic capabilities. Utility is a very hard word to define. To keep this video consistent with the DPS videos that came out earlier, I'm going to use the same definition here. Utility is any ability that changes how you can pull a dungeon, like how battle reses allow groups to perform skips, as well as unique answers to different enemies, like Dispels, Death Grip, or Spell Reflect. I'm also going to include group-wide defensive abilities like Rallying Cry in this category. Most crowd control effects, both AoE and single target, are instead going to be scored in mob control. This category measures both the quality and the quantity of abilities that the class has to stop dangerous casts and control enemies in the middle of a pull. If you're listening to other people talking about class values, the word utility includes this category too, but for this video I'm splitting it up to help further differentiate the abilities of the different tanks. Damage is a valuable way that tanks contribute to a group's success in Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus is primarily an AoE environment, so tank will earn more points in this category if their damage works well against multiple targets, rather than against just one. Threat is also an issue in Mythic Plus this expansion, so doing enough damage to keep the mobs attacking you is a vitally important trait in a tank, especially if your group is low on misdirection effects. Before we get started, this video is my opinion. You might have a different opinion based on your experiences, and if you do, I'd love to hear it in the comments. For any level below the highest keys on the live servers, or the MDI on the tournament realm, the best class for you to play is probably the class you are the best at, or the class you enjoy the most. But if you want to learn why some classes are more represented than others in the highest levels of the game, this video is my attempt to explain that. Let's start off with Prot Warrior. Against physical damage, Protection Warriors are extremely tanky. As long as shield block is up, they are in very little danger of dying to auto attacks, and they can bridge the gaps in their shield block uptime with a wide array of quickly recharging cooldowns. In panic situations, warriors can kite easily with Heroic Leap, so against physical damage, they certainly earn all 8 available points. Magic damage, however, is a weakness for Prot Warriors. Some kinds of magic can be entirely negated with Spell Reflect, but against everything else magic, warriors will take very heavy damage since they rely on blocking as their primary form of mitigation. I'm awarding half a point for tankiness against magic damage, due to the strength of Spell Reflect, bringing Warrior up to 8.5 points out of 10 for tankiness. Prot Warrior has relatively little utility. They do bring Rallying Cry, which is a powerful group-wide health increase. In higher keys in particular, this ability becomes very valuable, as it can mean the difference between life and death against abilities like Kragmaw the Infested's Tantrum. Spell Reflect is also useful in some dungeons, allowing you to pull otherwise very challenging enemies. I'm awarding Warrior 2 points out of 5 for utility. Mob Control, by contrast, is a strength for Warriors. They can use an AoE Fear, an AoE Stun, and they can talent into a long-range single-target stun. If a Warrior anticipates the need for more control, they can even use Conflict and Strife in their major slot, along with Careful Footwork, to be able to keep enemies rooted and unable to attack them for surprisingly high amounts of time. This is a lot of AoE mob control, and earns Warrior the full 5 points. Damage is another Warrior strength. In both single-target and AoE situations, they can pump out ridiculous damage. They also increase the entire group's attack power through Battle Shout. Unlike other tank specs, they can do massive damage without making serious defensive sacrifices. In some situations, Spell Reflect also contributes huge amounts of damage. Bosses like Adderus and Aspix, and the Heartsbane Triad, are ones where a Prot Warrior cuts huge chunks of health from their health bars. This damage does not show up on in-game damage meters, but if you're curious, you can check data from Warcraft logs to see just how high this damage is. Warriors definitely earn all 5 points for damage. Totaling it up, warriors have picked up 20.5 points. This is a very high score, and the only major weakness of the warrior is heavy sustained magic damage, like the kind you'll find on the last two bosses of the Motherlode. I expect warriors will be the undisputed best tank in both MDI-style keys and on the live ladder this season. Up next, the Vengeance Demon Hunter. There are two primary builds of Vengeance Demon Hunter that you may encounter in Mythic Plus. The key point of differentiation is in the talent tree. Spirit Bomb is a talent that allows the Demon Hunter to do substantial AoE damage, and Anima of Life and Death as a major essence can go into this build as well. If this is used in conjunction with the health increase of Metamorphosis, the Demon Hunter can spike to very high damage numbers. Unfortunately, this build has serious tankiness problems in high keys, and is prone to getting one-shot whenever Demon Spikes is down. Instead, the prevailing build of Demon Hunter in high keys, and the one I'll be scoring in this video, is built around the Gluttony talent, often in combination with the Vision of Perfection major essence, in order to get a very high uptime on Metamorphosis. With this build, it's possible to almost always have Demon Spikes or Meta up, and in this state, the Demon Hunter is very, very tanky. There are still moments of downtime, though Demon Hunters have tools to kite during these moments. I award 7 of the 8 physical tankiness points. Magical tankiness is also a big strength of the Demon Hunter, who naturally reduce incoming magic damage and self-heal against it very effectively. This is worth both of the available points, bringing DH up to a total of 9 out of 10 for tankiness. Demon Hunters bring Imprison, a powerful crowd control ability that notably allows the group to walk past the enemy without getting in combat. This gives the group extra options to move about the dungeon, and is one of only 2 crowd control abilities that behaves this way, the other one being Sap. Demon Hunter's sigils also can sometimes set up unique pulls. For instance, Sigil of Misery was used in the MDI in Siege of Borealis to lock down enemies while the Ashvane Spotter took care of them. I'm awarding Demon Hunters 2 points for utility. Sigils primarily score in the mob control category, where they provide tremendous amounts of value. All 3 mob control sigils are awesome. Sigil of Silence compares favorably to Solar Beam, which earned many points for Balance Druid back in the range DPS video. Sigil of Misery works well as a way to temporarily stop casts in AoE, or to hold enemies in place for a while setting up a pull. And Sigil of Chains is a hugely powerful tool to group up all the enemies, stop them from doing whatever they were doing, and potentially chain into further AoE crowd control. In addition to these 3 sigils, Demon Hunters have a ranged kick and an offensive purge. This spec earns the full 5 points for mob control. Damage is a weakness of the Gluttony build of Demon Hunter. They do notably increase the entire group's magic damage through Chaos Brand, but they still end up contributing far less to the overall damage meters than warriors. I'm giving DH 2 points out of 5 for damage. Demon Hunter tanks have earned 18 points out of 25, which is only a couple points below warriors. I think they'll absolutely be capable of timing very high keys, though in order to keep up with the warriors, you'll need to find a way to pull bigger in order to make up for the lost damage. The next spec we will cover is Protection Paladin. Paladins are quite tanky while they have Shield of the Righteous active, which can be pretty often. Even with Shield of the Righteous active, though, they can struggle against heavy sustained incoming damage. But luckily, they have a massive set of cooldowns that they can use to survive. Divine Shield is the most iconic of these, and they can and generally do talent it to include an AoE taunt that lasts for its full duration. In settings where Paladins are under constant pressure for long periods of time, they can begin to run low on these cooldowns, or worse, they can run out of Shield of the Righteous charges. Hard-hitting tyrannical bosses or big chain pulls are the primary causes of this, and in these cases the Paladin may need a lot of help from the group to survive. I'm awarding Paladin 5 points out of 8 for physical tankiness. Magic damage is something that a Paladin has several options for. Their kit includes a potent self-heal, and they can talent into Holy Shield and or Blessing of Spell Warding for dungeons where they anticipate heavy magic damage. I'm giving Paladins both of the available magic tankiness points, bringing their total score to 7 points out of 10 for tankiness. Utility is a Paladin strength. They have several buttons that can be used to help other members of their group. Blessing of Protection, or the talented replacement Blessing of Spell Warding, can both be life-saving, and Paladins can use Blessing of Sacrifice to grant a damage reduction to somebody else in return for taking the damage themselves. Blessing of Freedom in some dungeons can counter certain enemy casts, and Paladins can dispel both poisons and diseases. Once every 10 minutes, they can use Lay on Hands to fully heal either themselves or another member of their group. This kit is full of utility and earns the full 5 points available. Paladins can control enemies with a few abilities. Hammer of Justice is a powerful single-target stun with a long duration, and they can talent into a reduced cooldown for it, or they can instead pick up Blinding Light as an AoE disorient. The most powerful mob control ability of the Protection Paladin is Avenger's Shield, which can be used every few seconds, depending on procs, to interrupt and silence enemies. These extra interrupts, if well used, can take massive amounts of pressure off the group, and can even allow compositions that would otherwise struggle with interrupts, like double-ranged comps, to work. I'm giving Paladins 4 points out of 5 for mob control. Paladins can do respectable damage depending on their build. Unfortunately though, to really compete with Protection Warriors, they need to sacrifice serious amounts of survivability and select talents like Seraphim and essences like Anima of Life and Death, instead of defensive options like Last Defender and Memory of Lucid Dreams. In this more defensive build, which is what scored points in the tankiness category, Paladins only earned 2 points out of 5 for damage. Prot Pallies have picked up 18 points out of 25 overall. This puts them a clear cut below the Warriors, but they are certainly a viable spec that will put up results in high keys. They may just have a little bit more trouble in the very highest level of keys, especially on tyrannical weeks, where hard-hitting boss marathons can wear down their defenses. Alright, let's move on to Brewmaster Monk. Last patch, Brewmasters were by far the tankiest spec, as they had massive self-healing in addition to naturally smooth damage intake with the stagger mechanic. This patch, they will continue to have smooth incoming damage, though stagger's effectiveness has been nerfed a little. They also scaled very well with the Eternal Palace trinkets, Edict of the Faithless and Bloodthirsty Urchin, which multiplied with their Celestial Fortune passive. Those trinkets going obsolete hurts, but the biggest problem with Brewmaster this patch will be heavy overall healing required. Gift of the Ox, a huge portion of their self-healing, was nerfed to the ground, so Brewmasters will now need serious amounts of healing channeled into them to stay healthy through heavy incoming damage. They also lack many major defensive cooldowns. I'm giving Brewmasters 6.5 points for physical tankiness, and I can only award them half a point against magic, since Gift of the Ox self-healing was such a huge part of their anti-magic kit. This combines to earn Brewmaster 7 points out of 10 for tankiness. The biggest piece of utility that Monk brings is Ring of Peace, which can set up unique pulls and separate enemies that would otherwise be inseparable. Outside of this, they can dispel both poison and disease, but they earn 3 points for utility almost entirely from the strength of Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace also scores points for mob control, where it functions as a powerful AoE crowd control effect. Monks also get Leg Sweep, an AoE stun, and Paralysis, a single target incapacitate. 2 powerful AoE effects are enough to earn Monk 4 points out of 5 for mob control. Brewmaster damage is not bad, but they lack massive AoE damage, or many options to go more offensive in their kit. They also don't have an offensive damage cooldown, so they can have trouble gaining threat near the start of bigger pulls, especially if their first Keg Smash doesn't hit everything. Still, the overall damage numbers they can put out are fairly good, and they contribute Mystic Touch, which is a sizable overall damage increase in most groups. I'm giving Brewmaster 3 points out of 5 for damage. That's 17 points overall for Brewmaster, solidly in the middle of the pack, a cut below Prot Warrior, but within a point or two of the rest. If I'm wrong about this spec, it'll probably be because the nerfs were either more or less damaging than I expected. The next spec we will talk about is Blood Death Knight. When patch 8.1 hit, Blood Death Knight took a serious set of nerfs from which they've never truly recovered in Mythic Plus. The armor reduction in particular has led to the spec feeling incredibly squishy, even against auto attacks from random enemies in high keys. I can only give Blood 4 of the 8 available points against physical damage, but the good news is that the spec does pick up the 2 anti-magic points, increasing its tankiness total to 6, off the back of anti-magic shell, and the natural effectiveness of self-healing against magic damage, as compared to something like Protection Warrior, which relies on blocking the damage up front. Death Grip and Gorfine's Grasp are uniquely powerful abilities in Mythic Plus. In Toldagor, for instance, Gorfine's is perfect for killing multiple packs at once in the cannon section, and in the Motherlode, Death Grip can be used to get extra mechanized peacekeepers piloted. In addition to this, Death Knights bring a battle res, which is potentially going to be in higher demand this season than in the last few, as Resto Druids may be a little bit less ubiquitous. In a Taldazar and King's Rest, their ability to permanently mind control undead is also powerful. 4 points to DK for utility. Death Grip and Gorfine's Grasp also score points as mob control, where they're joined by Asphyxiate, a single target stun, and a talented Death and Decay slow to round out the DK mob control kit. You may think it's unfair for me to count Death Grip and Mass Grip twice in this way, but these abilities are really that good, and for the longest time, they were part of what made Blood Death Knight a meta-defining tank in Mythic Plus. Death Knights also have a nice ranged kick, so I'm giving Blood 4 points for mob control. The 8.1 nerfs also hit Blood Death Knight in the damage department, and even with a fully offensive build and the Bone Storm talent, they struggle to remain competitive with prop warriors. In high keys, balancing offensive choices with the required defenses to survive can be tough, and going for too much damage can lead to the DK being forced to kite more often, reducing the overall damage that both they and the group can put out. I'm giving Death Knights 2 points for damage. Overall, Blood Death Knight has picked up 16 points out of 25 possible. If either the Bone Storm or Armor nerfs in patch 8.1 were reverted, this spec would likely again rise to a prominent spot in the metagame, especially in non-Resto Druid compositions. As it stands, they're likely to remain on or slightly below par with the 4 other non-warrior tanks. The last tank that we'll talk about is Guardian Druid. Especially at the start of each pull, Guardian Druids are in the most danger of any of the tank specs. Once they have some Ironforge rolling, they become fairly tanky, but in high keys they can fall behind in the first few globals and spend the rest of the pull trying to catch back up. Or they may be forced to use major defensive cooldowns on pull and not have them available when needed later. For this reason, I'm only awarding Guardian 6 of the 8 available points against physical damage, though it's worth noting that their large health pool gives healers a fairly large window to save them later in the pull. Against magic damage, Guardian struggles, as much of their tankiness is in armor and dodge, which are ineffective against magic, and earn the spec neither of the magic damage points on the table. This leaves Guardian at 6 out of 10 for tankiness. Druid utility is great, and Guardians bring all the familiar spells that have become staples of Mythic Plus. If you're playing without a Resto Druid, these effects, like Battle Res, Poison and Curse Dispels, and Soothe, skyrocket in value. But even if you have another Druid, there's often value to be had in the second copy of these abilities. Guardians also bring Stampeding Roar, which is particularly useful when combined with Shroud of Concealment to lengthen the distance that can be skipped. I'm giving Druid 4 points for utility. Guardian mob control is strong, with powerful Druid spells Typhoon and Ursul's Vortex combining to make a mass grip of sorts. These abilities can also be used separately, and both can be worth massive amounts of value in most pulls. Guardian also gets Incapacitating Roar, which is an AoE disorient. There are a few drawbacks to Guardian, however. Their Entangling Roots ability breaks them out of bear form, so it's generally not something that they can cast in combat. And their Interrupt comes stapled to a charge that's usually more downside than upside. I'm giving Guardian 3 points for mob control. With the most powerful offensive build, Guardians can do tremendous damage, on par with even the Warriors. Unfortunately, this build sacrifices too much survivability to be viable in higher keys, and generally the builds that work best do much more mediocre damage, worthy of only 2 of the 5 points available. Overall, Guardian Druid has gotten 15 out of 25 points, only a few points below most of the other specs. It's really not much worse than these specs, and can likely compete at the same level of keys as all but the Warriors. Here's my ranking of all the tanks. I expect Protection Warrior will dominate the highest level of keys this season, though I think once you drop 1 or 2 key levels from the World First keys, we'll begin to see all 6 tank specs represented. In MDI level keys, I expect entirely Warriors. The next most likely spec to see play in that format is actually Blood Death Knight, if they end up scaling well enough to be able to survive massive pulls and put out reasonable damage, as Death Grip and Mass Grip are just so strong in the MDI setting. I hope you've enjoyed this look into the tank specs that might be the best next season. This video was mainly designed to look at the very highest levels of the game, not weekly plus 10 or plus 15 keys, where player skill vastly outweighs the class that they're playing. Once again, I'd like to emphasize that this video is my opinion, and is designed to be the start of the conversation rather than a definitive answer. If you have a different opinion and would like to continue the conversation, let's talk in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and check out the rest of the series on this channel. If you want to hear more from me, check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Dratnos, where I make all sorts of Mythic Plus focused content. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.